The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room Park Do-hoon had ever seen. Golden light fell from windows that stretched 1,000 meters high. Statues of ancient alien heroes lined the walls. Beings from 100 different worlds walked across floors made of crystal. And somewhere in this beautiful place, a trap was being set for humanity. But Admiral Park Do-hoon did not know this. Not yet. He stood beside Ambassador Lee Tae-won, both men wearing the formal white uniforms of the United Earth government. They looked small here. Humans always looked small in council spaces. That was the point. For 80 years, humanity had been a junior member of the Galactic Council. They were given a small corner of the galaxy. They were denied advanced technology. They were watched, tested, and reminded every day that they were young, that they had not yet earned their place among the stars. Today, that was supposed to change. High Arbiter Velnus stood at the center of the council chamber. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected light like a mirror. His eyes were completely black. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the vast room. "The swarm has returned," Velnus said. "Our long-range sensors have detected a massive invasion force moving toward the outer rim. Billions of creatures. They will consume everything in their path." Whispers spread through the chamber. The swarm was an old enemy. Stories said they had nearly destroyed the galaxy 10,000 years ago. Now they were back. "We must send our greatest warriors to meet this threat," Velnus continued. He turned his black eyes toward the human delegation. "And we believe humanity is ready." Park Do-hoon felt his heart jump. Beside him, Ambassador Lee Tae-won straightened his shoulders with pride. "You want us to fight?" Lee Tae-won asked. "We want you to lead," Velnus replied. "Send your fleet to the outer rim, stop the swarm, prove to the galaxy that humans deserve to stand as equals." That night, the humans celebrated. In the embassy, Lee Tae-won raised his glass and smiled for the first time in years. "This is it," he said. "This is our moment. When we return victorious, no one will ever treat us as children again." Admiral Park Do-hoon drank, but he did not smile. Something felt wrong. The offer was too generous. The Council had spent 80 years keeping humanity weak. Why would they suddenly trust humans with such an important mission? He found Kim Yuna in the intelligence room. She was young, but her mind was sharper than anyone Park had ever known. Screens glowed around her, showing data streams from across the galaxy. "Something is not right," Park said. Yuna nodded. Her fingers moved across the controls. "I have been looking at the swarm data. The sensor readings they gave us are strange. The patterns do not match historical records." "What do you mean?" "The old swarm moved in spirals. These readings show straight lines. And the energy signatures are wrong, too clean, too perfect." She looked up at him. "Admiral, I think this data might be fake." Park Do-hoon stared at the screens. His stomach turned cold. But what could he do? The Council had given an order. Earth's government had already accepted. Refusing now would shame humanity before the entire galaxy. "Keep investigating," he said quietly. "Tell no one." 3 days later, the United Earth Fleet gathered above Earth. 200 warships, 50,000 soldiers, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Captain Choi Mirai stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the blue planet below. She had grown up in Busan, dreaming of the stars. Now she was about to fly farther than any human had gone before. "All ships report ready," her officer said. Mirai nodded. "Signal the Admiral. We are prepared to jump." Across the fleet, Admiral Park Do-hoon gave the order. Engines roared to life. Space bent and twisted. One by one, the human ships disappeared into the void, racing toward the outer rim. On Earth, billions of people watched the sky and cheered. Their defenders were going to save the galaxy. Their children were finally going to be heroes. Ambassador Lee Tae-won stood in his office watching the ships vanish. He felt proud. He felt hopeful. He did not notice Ambassador Torath standing in the shadows behind him. Torath was Velnus's assistant. He was shorter than his master, with the same silver skin and black eyes. He watched the human ships leave with a small smile on his thin lips. "They are gone," Torath said quietly into his communicator. "All of them. Earth is undefended." On the Council homeworld, High Arbiter Velnus received the message. He sat alone in his private chamber, surrounded by darkness. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he activated a secure channel. "Begin the invasion," he said. "Burn their worlds. Kill their people. Leave no survivors." The channel closed. Velnus leaned back in his chair. Humans were dangerous. He had seen the reports. He had studied their history. A species that had gone from caves to starships in mere thousands of years. A species that fought wars with terrible fury and then rebuilt with impossible speed. A species that never, ever gave up. They could not be allowed to grow stronger. They had to be eliminated while they were still weak. Order 7714 was complete. The trap was set, and humanity had walked right into it. Far away at the edge of known space, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Admiral Park Do-hun stood on his bridge, staring at the view screen. There was nothing there. No swarm, no enemy. Just empty space and distant stars. His communicator beeped. Kim Yuna's voice came through, shaking with fear. "Admiral, I am receiving an emergency transmission from Earth. The Velthari Dominion has attacked. Our colonies are burning. Seoul is under bombardment." Park Do-hun's blood turned to ice. He finally understood. The Council had not given them a mission. They had given them a death sentence. The fires of Seoul burned bright enough to be seen from space. Ambassador Lee Tae-won watched from the window of his office as Velthari warships filled the sky. They were massive things, black and angular, like floating mountains of metal. Their weapons fired beams of green light that cut through buildings like knives through paper. Towers that had stood for centuries fell in seconds. He grabbed his communicator. "This is Ambassador Lee Tae-won calling any Earth defense station. Please respond." Static. Nothing but static. The door behind him exploded inward. Velthari soldiers rushed in, their gray armor gleaming. They grabbed Tae-won and threw him to the ground. One of them pressed a weapon against his head. "The human leader," the soldier said. "High Arbiter Velnus wants him alive. He wants the human to watch." They dragged Tae-won to the roof. From there, he could see everything. The Han River was boiling from the heat of crashed ships. The old palace was on fire. People ran through the streets, screaming, dying, and there was nothing he could do. Thousands of light years away, Admiral Park Do-hun stood frozen on his bridge. The emergency transmission from Earth played on every screen. Cities burning, colonies falling, millions of voices crying for help that would not come. "How long to return to Earth?" he asked. His navigation officer checked the data. His face went pale. 47 days, Admiral. And the Council has activated blockades on every major route. They are stopping all human ships. 47 days. Earth would be ashes by then. Captain Choi Mire's voice came through the fleet channel. "Admiral, I have found something. There is an uncharted wormhole 17 hours from here. My ship's sensors detected it by accident. It is not on any Council map. Where does it lead? Unknown, but it goes in the right direction. Toward Earth." Park Do-hun closed his eyes. An uncharted wormhole was incredibly dangerous. Ships could be crushed, scattered across space, or simply disappear forever. But staying here meant watching Earth die from a distance. "All ships," he said into the fleet channel. "We are going through the wormhole. Those who wish to stay behind may do so." I will not order anyone into the unknown. Not a single ship stayed behind. 17 hours later, the human fleet approached the wormhole. It looked like a wound in space, purple and black, spinning slowly. Strange lights flickered inside it. All ships, enter in formation, Park Do-hoon ordered. Stay close. If you lose contact, do not stop. Keep moving forward. The UES Horizon went first. Captain Choi Mireille gripped her chair as her ship was swallowed by the wormhole. Everything shook. Alarms screamed. Through the view screen, she saw colors that had no names and shapes that hurt to look at. Then she saw something else. Other ships in the fleet, breaking apart, engines failing, hulls cracking, crews dying without even time to scream. "We are losing ships," her officer shouted. 20 gone, 30, 40. Mireille wanted to cry, but there was no time for tears. She kept her hands steady and her eyes forward. After what felt like forever, the horizon burst out of the wormhole into normal space. Mireille looked at her sensors. Her heart sank. Of the 200 ships that entered, only 12 came out. Behind her, Admiral Park Do-hoon's flagship emerged, damaged but alive. His voice came through the channel, tired and heavy. "Report all surviving ships. Begin damage assessment." He paused. "And someone tell me where we are." They were in unknown space, far from any star on their maps. But they were closer to Earth. Kim Yuna calculated the distance. 6 days to Earth at maximum speed, she said. 6 days. Maybe not too late. Maybe they could still save something. But when they arrived, they found only death. The Velthari had been thorough. Earth's orbital stations were debris. The moon base was silent. The great cities that had once shone with lights were dark craters. Captain Choi Mireille flew the horizon low over the Korean peninsula. She had grown up here. She had learned to swim in the ocean near Busan. She had watched fireworks over Seoul with her grandmother. Now there was nothing. Just smoke and silence and the smell of burning. "Scanning for survivors," her officer said. His voice was shaking. "I am detecting life signs, underground bunkers, subway systems. Millions of people are still alive, but the Velthari are hunting them." Park Do-hoon contacted the surviving ships. "We cannot fight the Velthari fleet directly. We are too few, but we can rescue survivors. All ships begin evacuation operations. Save everyone you can." For 3 days, the 12 human ships worked without rest. They landed in ruined cities and hidden valleys. They loaded survivors into cargo holds designed for equipment. Children sat on weapon crates, families squeezed into maintenance corridors. Kim Yuna coordinated the rescues from her station. She had not slept in 40 hours. Her eyes burned. Her hands trembled. But she kept working. "Admiral," she said finally, "Velthari reinforcements are coming. We have to leave." Park Do-hoon looked at the screens. They had saved 200,000 people. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was all they could do. "All ships, prepare to jump. We are leaving." As the fleet rose from the burning planet, Mireille took one last look at her homeland. Tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady. "We will come back," she whispered. "I promise." The ships disappeared into the stars. On the surface, in the ruins of Seoul, Ambassador Lee Tae-won was still alive. The Velthari had kept him in a cell, making him watch the destruction on screens. Now they left him there, alone in the rubble. He crawled out of the broken building. Around him, the city was silent except for the crackling of fires. He had nothing. No weapons. No communicator. No hope. But he was still alive. And as long as he was alive, he could fight. Far away in the unknown space called the Drift, Admiral Park Do-hoon addressed the survivors. They gathered in the cargo hold of his flagship, 200,000 scared and angry faces looking up at him. "The Galactic Council did this to us," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "They sent us away. They invited our enemies to slaughter our families. They wanted humanity to die." He looked at them all. Old people, children, soldiers, scientists, everyone who was left. "They were wrong," he said. "We are not going to die. We are going to survive. We are going to grow strong. And one day, we are going to make them pay for what they did." In the crowd, Captain Choi Mirai raised her fist. Others followed. 200,000 voices rose together in the darkness. They had lost everything, but they were still human. And humans do not give up. And now Earth was paying the price. 3 years passed in the darkness between stars. The humans built their new home inside an asteroid field that no one else wanted. The rocks were too dense, too dangerous for normal ships. But humans were not normal. They learned to fly through the spinning stones like fish swimming through coral. They carved tunnels into the largest asteroids. They built factories and farms and schools in places where no one would ever look. They called it Haven. Baek Jinho stood in his workshop, surrounded by pieces of alien technology. He had been an engineer on Earth, designing simple things like bridges and buildings. Now he was learning to build weapons that could kill gods. "This power core is fascinating," he said, holding up a glowing crystal. "The Velthari use it to power their shields, but I think I can make it do something else." Kim Yuna looked up from her screens. She had dark circles under her eyes. She always had dark circles now. Sleep was a luxury she could not afford. "What kind of something else?" she asked. Jinho smiled. It was not a happy smile. "I think I can make it explode. Very, very big." Across Haven, the survivors worked. Old people taught children. Soldiers trained in zero gravity. Scientists studied every piece of alien equipment they could find or steal. Admiral Park Do-hun walked through the tunnels every day. He knew every face. He knew every name. He remembered every person they had lost. At night, he sat alone and studied the data Kim Yuna had stolen from the Council, the encrypted files she had grabbed before Earth fell. For months, the codes had been unbreakable, but Yuna was patient. Yuna was brilliant, and finally, the secrets began to reveal themselves. "Admiral," Yuna said one morning, her voice strange, "you need to see this." Park Do-hun came to her station. On the screen was a document marked with the seal of the High Arbiter, Order 7714, the order that had sent humanity to die. "I translated the full text," Yuna said. "It was not just about the fake swarm mission. There are additional instructions." She scrolled down. Park Do-hun read the words. His hands began to shake. Order 7714 was a complete plan for the extinction of humanity, the fake mission, the invasion, and afterwards the hunting down of any survivors, the destruction of any record that humans had ever existed. The Council wanted to erase humanity from the galaxy forever. "Who authorized this?" Park Do-hun asked. "High Arbiter Velnus himself. But there is something else." Yuna pulled up another file. "Not all council members agreed. One of them argued against the order. She was overruled and threatened with exile." "Who?" "Consul Mira. She represents a species called the Then. They are one of the oldest members of the council." That night, Park Do-hun made a decision. He activated a hidden communication channel and sent a message into the void. 3 weeks later, a small ship arrived at Haven. It carried no weapons. It flew a flag of peace, and inside was Consul Mira. She was tall and thin, with blue skin and eyes like golden stars. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who was used to being watched. "Admiral Park Do-hun," she said, "I am glad you survived. I argued against Order 7714. Velnus did not listen. When I tried to warn your people, he had me silenced." "Why should I trust you?" Park Do-hun asked. "Because I brought you gifts." Mira handed him a data chip. "Star charts, security codes, the location of every Velthari military base, and information about other species who hate the Council as much as you do. Park Do-hun looked at the chip. It was small enough to fit in his palm, but it contained everything they needed. "What do you want in return?" he asked. "When you win," Mira said, "and you will win, I want you to build something better. Not another council that rules through fear. Something fair, something just." "And if we lose?" Mira smiled sadly. "Then I will die knowing I tried to do the right thing." Captain Choi Mirai did not wait in Haven. She was not built for waiting. She took the horizon and began hunting. Velthari supply ships, council communication stations, anything that moved and belonged to the enemy. At first she was alone, then others joined her. Smugglers who hated the council, pirates who wanted revenge for their own reasons, aliens from species that had been crushed under council rule. The galaxy began to whisper about a ghost ship. A human vessel that appeared from nowhere, struck without mercy, and vanished before anyone could respond. Mirai sat in her captain's chair, watching another Velthari transport burn in the void. Her first officer, a young man named Yoon Seojun, stood beside her. "They are starting to fear us," he said. "Good," Mirai replied. "Fear is the beginning." On occupied Earth, Ambassador Lee Taewon had found his own way to fight. He had spent months hiding in the ruins, eating scraps, avoiding Velthari patrols. Then he found others, survivors who had escaped the bunkers, soldiers who had hidden in the mountains, children who had grown hard and angry. He taught them to fight, not with weapons they did not have, but with tricks and traps and patience. They sabotaged Velthari equipment. They freed prisoners. They painted messages on walls. "We are still here." The Velthari called them insects. Lee Taewon smiled at that. Insects were small, insects were everywhere, and insects could make giants fall. Back at Haven, the fleet grew. Baek Jinho's weapons became more powerful. Kim Yuna's intelligence network spread across the galaxy. Consul Mira brought more allies, more resources, more hope. 3 years after the massacre, Admiral Park Do-hun stood before a fleet of 50 ships. They were not all human ships anymore. Some came from the Then, some from the Karathi, a warrior species that the Council had betrayed centuries ago. Some were stolen Velthari vessels, repainted with human colors. "We have waited long enough," Park Do-hun said. "We have hidden long enough. Our people on Earth are still fighting. Our enemies think we are dead. It is time to show them how wrong they are." He looked at the faces around him. Human, alien, young, old, all of them united by one thing. They had been betrayed, and they wanted justice. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "We are going home." 50 ships powered up their engines. 50 crews checked their weapons. And somewhere in the void, Captain Choi Mirai received the message and turned the horizon toward Earth. The gathering was complete. The army was ready, and humanity was coming back. The plan had 3 parts, like a knife with 3 blades. Each one had to cut at exactly the right moment. Captain Choi Mirai commanded the first blade. She took 20 ships to the Velthari military station above the planet called Nexar. It was the largest base in the sector. If she attacked it, the Velthari would have to respond with everything they had. That was exactly what she wanted. "All ships, attack formation," Mirai ordered. Her voice was calm. Her heart was not. The 20 ships flew straight at the station. Velthari defense batteries opened fire. Green beams cut through space. Mirai's fleet scattered, dodged, weaved between the shots like dancers. "Return fire," Mirai said. "Make it loud. Make them call for help." Human weapons slammed into the station's shields. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. The Velthari commander, panicking, sent out a distress call. Every Velthari ship in the region began moving toward Nexar, away from Earth. The second blade belonged to Kim Yuna. She sat alone in a small ship, hidden behind a dead moon. In front of her was the most powerful transmitter ever built by human hands. Baek Jinho had made it from stolen council technology. It could send a signal to every corner of the galaxy. "The translation is ready," Yuna said into her communicator. "Order 7714 in 57 languages. Every species will understand." Admiral Park Do-hoon's voice came back. "Send it." Yuna pressed the button. Across the galaxy, screens flickered. Speakers crackled. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings heard the same message. They heard the voice of High Arbiter Velnus, recorded 3 years ago, giving the order to destroy humanity. They heard him explain why, because humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too ambitious. They heard him say that any species could be next. On the Council homeworld, High Arbiter Velnus watched the broadcast with growing horror. His private words, his secret orders, were now playing in every city on every planet. "Shut it down," he screamed. "Block the signal." But it was too late. The truth was spreading faster than any ship could fly. The third blade was Admiral Park Do-hoon himself. While the Velthari fleet raced toward Nexar, while the galaxy listened to the Council's crimes, Park Do-hoon led the main human fleet through the secret wormhole. 30 ships, carrying the best weapons Baek Jinho had ever built. They emerged above Earth. The Velthari occupation force was not expecting them. Only 12 warships remained in orbit, and their crews were confused by the broadcast they had just heard. Were they the villains? Had their leaders lied to them? They did not have time to find answers. "All ships, fire," Park Do-hoon commanded. Human weapons tore into the Velthari formation. The new shields that Jinho had designed held against enemy fire. The new missiles that Jinho had created punched through enemy armor like it was paper. In 20 minutes, the Battle of Earth was over. 12 Velthari warships drifted dead in space. Not a single human ship was lost. On the surface, Ambassador Lee Tae-won saw the explosions in the sky. For 3 years he had waited. For 3 years he had fought in the shadows. Now the moment had come. "All resistance units," he said into his stolen communicator. "Attack! Free our people! Take back our home!" Across Earth, the resistance rose. Fighters emerged from tunnels and basements. They struck Velthari patrols. They captured weapons and vehicles. They opened prison camps and freed the survivors inside. In Seoul, Lee Tae-won led the assault on the Velthari headquarters. It was the same building where they had held him prisoner 3 years ago, where they had made him watch his world burn. Now it was his turn to watch them fall. The fight was brutal, but short. The Velthari soldiers, cut off from their fleet, their leaders exposed as liars, fought without hope. Many surrendered. Some fought to the death. By sunset, the building was in human hands. Lee Tae-won stood on the roof, looking at the ruined city he had once loved. Behind him, prisoners walked free for the first time in years. Children who had been born in chains saw the open sky. "Ambassador," a soldier said, "Admiral Park Do-hoon is calling. He wants to speak with you." Lee Tae-won took the communicator. His hands were covered in dirt and blood. His voice was rough from years of hiding. "Admiral," he said, "it is good to hear from you." "Tae-won," Park Do-hoon's voice was warm. "I see you did not wait for us." "I was busy." Above Earth, the human fleet maintained its watch. Captain Choi Mirai arrived with her ships, fresh from the battle at Nexar. The Velthari reinforcements had turned back when they heard the broadcast. They did not want to fight for leaders who had been exposed as monsters. Kim Yuna's broadcast continued to spread. On the Council homeworld, crowds gathered in the streets, demanding answers. Other species refused to send ships to help the Velthari. The Council's alliance was falling apart. Consul Mira appeared on screens across the galaxy, making a public statement. Her blue face was calm, her golden eyes steady. "The Galactic Council committed a crime against humanity," she said. I was silenced when I tried to stop it. I will be silenced no longer. I stand with the humans, and I ask all just beings to stand with us." More species joined her call. The Karathi declared war on the Council. The Then opened their borders to human refugees. Even some Velthari commanders defected, ashamed of what their government had done. Earth was free, but Admiral Park Do-hoon was not satisfied. He stood on his bridge, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, High Arbiter Velnus was still alive, still giving orders, still believing he could escape justice. Captain Choi Mirai joined him. Her uniform was torn and burned from battle, but her eyes were bright. "Earth is liberated," she said. "We did it." "We liberated Earth," Park Do-hoon replied. "But the Council still exists. Velnus still rules. Until he answers for what he did. This is not over." Mirai nodded slowly. "Then what do we do?" Park Do-hoon turned to face her. His eyes were cold and hard, like stones polished by years of grief. "We go to Velnar Prime," he said. "We go to the heart of the Council, and we make them remember why they were afraid of us." Mirai smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I will prepare the fleet." The ships began to move. Earth, battered but alive, grew smaller behind them. Ahead lay the stars, and beyond the stars, justice. Humanity was not just surviving anymore. Humanity was hunting. Velnar Prime was the jewel of the galaxy. Floating cities hung in pink clouds. Towers of crystal reached toward 3 suns. Gardens covered entire continents. For 10,000 years, this world had been the center of all civilization, the place where laws were made, where history was written. Today, it would become something else. Admiral Park Do-hoon's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like wolves appearing from a dark forest. 90 ships now. Human vessels flew beside Karathi warships. Then carriers hung next to stolen Velthari cruisers, an army of the betrayed, united by pain. "Admiral," Kim Yuna reported, "the Council fleet is assembling. 140 ships. They outnumber us." "Numbers do not matter," Park Do-hoon replied. "Courage matters, truth matters, and we have both." The Battle of Velnar Prime began. Velthari dreadnoughts fired their massive weapons. Council cruisers launched clouds of fighters. The sky above the beautiful world filled with fire and death. But the human fleet did not break. Captain Choi Mirai led the assault wing. Her ship, the Horizon, dove through enemy formations like a blade through water. Behind her, 20 ships followed, striking and vanishing, never staying still long enough to be targeted. "Focus on their command ships," Mirai ordered. "Cut off the head." Explosions tore through Velthari vessels. One by one, the Council's greatest warships went dark. On the flagship, Baek Jinho activated his greatest creation, a device that had taken 3 years to build, a weapon that used Council technology against itself. "Activating the null field," he said. A wave of invisible energy spread from the human flagship. It passed through every ship in the system, and everywhere it touched, faster-than-light engines stopped working. "What happened?" a Velthari captain screamed. "Our jump drives are offline." "Everyone's jump drives are offline," his officer replied, terrified. "No one can escape." Park Do-hoon smiled grimly. The Council had tried to trap humanity. Now humanity had trapped them. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, 70 Council ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost 22, but they held the field. Ambassador Torath tried to contact the human flagship. His silver face appeared on the screen, sweating with fear. "Admiral Park Do-hoon," he said, "please, let us negotiate. The Council is willing to offer reparations, territory, technology, whatever you want." Park Do-hoon looked at the alien who had delivered the false orders 3 years ago, who had smiled while humanity walked into a trap. Who had helped plan the deaths of billions? There is nothing you can offer, Park Do-hun said, except one thing. Where is Velnis? Torath's eyes widened. He is in the council chambers, but please, you cannot. Park Do-hun closed the channel. An hour later, human soldiers walked through the halls of the Galactic Council, the same halls where humanity had once stood as beggars, hoping for acceptance. Now they walked as conquerors. Ambassador Lee Tae-won led the way. He had traveled from Earth for this moment. His clothes were still worn from years of resistance fighting, but he walked with the dignity of a man who had survived everything. High Arbiter Velnis waited in the main chamber. He sat in his ancient chair, surrounded by guards who knew they could not win. His silver skin was pale. His black eyes were empty. "So the insects return," Velnis said. His voice was bitter. "Come to destroy everything we built." "We came for justice," Lee Tae-won replied. "You tried to kill our species. Every man, woman, and child. You wanted to erase us from existence." "Because you were dangerous," Velnis stood, his calm breaking. "I studied humanity. I saw what you would become. In 1,000 years, you would rule this galaxy. In 2,000, you would rule others. Your species does not know how to be satisfied. You always want more. You always grow. You always conquer." He pointed at Lee Tae-won with a shaking finger. "I was protecting the galaxy from you." Admiral Park Do-hun stepped forward. He looked at the creature who had ordered the deaths of billions, who had burned Earth and laughed, who still believed he was right. "You were afraid of what we might become," Park Do-hun said quietly. "So you decided to kill us before we had the chance. That was your choice. Now you will live with the consequences of that choice." "What consequences?" Velnis sneered. "You will execute me? Make me a martyr?" "No." Park Do-hun shook his head. "Killing you would be too quick, too simple. Instead, you will be exiled. We have found a world at the edge of the galaxy, cold, barren, alone. You will live there for the rest of your very long life. You will watch through screens as humans build, create, and grow. You will see everything you feared come true. And you will know that you could have had us as friends, but you chose to make us enemies." Velnis's face went pale. For the first time, real fear showed in his black eyes. "No. No, you cannot." Guards took him away. His screams echoed through the ancient halls. 1 month later, the Galactic Council was dissolved. In its place rose the Interstellar Assembly. A new government, built on new principles. Every species had an equal voice. Every wrong would be heard. Every being would be protected. Consul Mira became the first speaker of the assembly. She stood before delegates from 100 worlds and spoke of hope, of healing, of a better future. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as children, not as conquerors, as equals. On Earth, the rebuilding began. Cities rose from ashes. Gardens grew in craters. Children played in streets that had once run with blood. Ambassador Lee Tae-won retired to a small house in the mountains. He spent his days reading books and watching the sky. Sometimes young people came to ask him about the war. He always told them the same thing. "Remember what we survived. Remember what we built. And remember to be kind to those who are weaker than you. That is what separates us from the monsters." Captain Choi Mirai continued to fly. The horizon became a symbol of hope, visiting distant worlds, carrying aid to those who needed it. She never forgot her home. But she learned that home could be anywhere. Baek Jin-ho built a school for engineers. He taught young humans and aliens to create, not destroy. His students went on to invent things he could never have imagined. Kim Yuna became the head of the new Interstellar Intelligence Service. She made sure that what happened to humanity would never happen to anyone else. She still did not sleep much. But now, when she lay awake at night, she thought about the future, instead of the past. Admiral Park Do-hun stood on the observation deck of his flagship for the last time. Outside the windows, 1,000 ships floated in peaceful formation. Human ships, alien ships, ships that had once been enemies. Behind him, Kim Yuna approached. "Do you think they will ever truly trust us?" she asked. Park Do-hun watched the lights of the fleet. He thought about everything they had lost, everything they had won, everything that was still to come. "They do not need to trust us," he said finally. "They just need to remember. We do not forget. We do not give up. And we do not forgive betrayal." He paused, and then a small smile crossed his tired face. "But we can learn to hope. We can learn to build. And maybe, if we are very lucky, we can learn to be more than what our enemies feared." The fleet activated its engines. The stars stretched into lines, and humanity flew forward into a future they had earned with blood and fire and the stubborn refusal to die. They had been deceived. They had been massacred. They had been scattered across the stars. But they had survived. They had returned. And now the galaxy would never forget them. This was the human way.